The House will come to order. Members will be at their seats. The clerk has opened the roll and you may record your presence. Please rise and give your attention to our House chaplain. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Representative Parker.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we stand before you today grateful for who you are and for all you have done for each of us. Thank you for yet another session through which you have led our leaders. A lot has been accomplished and some things didn't get done. The good news is nobody got hurt through it all. I ask that you be with each of them as they return to their regular work and try to get caught up. Be with them as they return to families, and may they have quality time with them to make up for lost time during this session. Be with them as they reconnect with their constituents, and may they not just hear what the people say, but listen intently so as to better know how to work on issues next year. Lastly, I leave all of them with your blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. This I pray in the name of Christ. Amen.
If all members have the opportunity to record their presence, the clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. Message from the governor, clerk will read.
House Bills 2077, 2121, 2187, signed on May 17, 2021. House Bill 2137, signed, approved May 19, 2021. House Bills 2026, 2079, 2158, 2224, and 2397, signed on May 21, 2021. And House Bill 2134 and 2313, signed, approved May 24, 2021. Laura Kelly, Governor.
Speaker recognizes Representative Bishop on a point of personal privilege.
First up, Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today it saddens me to say that even though I have proved that I flunk retirement a couple of times previously, I'm going to try it again. I will be retiring as of June 30th, 2021. So today, they need some tissues down here. Today is my last day in this chamber. Even at a sad time like this, I have so much gratitude to share with you. First and foremost, I thank the people of the 88th District. I think almost all of whom I know by name, for giving me the opportunity to serve them. I also thank each and every one of you for the many kindnesses I have received throughout my experience in the Capitol and as a representative. My thanks especially to two wonderful people, Sue Perry and Bernie O'Connick, two of the best office assistants in this building, and that's my humble opinion. Their help has been a wonderful amalgam of nurturing and professionalism that has so greatly smoothed the way for me and truly enabled me to serve the people of the 88th District. I appreciate the efforts of the leadership in this building and the professional staff, including Tom Day and his staff, who worked so hard to make sure that our session met constitutional standards for the work that we needed to do, and yet had responsible measures to keep us safe. And the rapid testing was absolutely crucial. Now, to my caucus, I say thanks. For being stalwart, dedicated colleagues, and truly just such fun people to be around, even if the gathering was too often via Zoom. I would like to call out especially the outstanding young people we have added to our caucus. Their brilliance and passion to accomplish what they were elected to do has inspired and comforted me. Inspired because, well, frankly, these folks are hard to keep up with. Comforted because they are just so capable and smart. I know the future is safe in their hands. And actually, this tells me that we need to do more to encourage younger folks to run and serve in this body. Younger people with careers and young families to support face barriers to serving that we should try harder to mitigate. The mix of generations serves Kansas best. The experience of elders plus the youthful awareness of new ideas, new technology, and a broader worldview will benefit us all. Let's be frank. You knew I had to say it. There were some disappointments during my 5 years serving here. A major one, of course, is that we have yet to expand Medicaid. But hope springs eternal. I have hope that we as a state will accomplish that goal in the not too distant future. It has been my privilege to serve on some excellent committees with some excellent representatives. Our Speaker Pro Tem was chair of the Judiciary Committee when I served on it. He was very generous and helpful to a non-lawyer in her very first term. Our chair of Insurance and Pensions was also gracious and fair-minded, not to mention patient with the many technical glitches we faced as we began this unique session. Lastly, I especially salute the chair and the ranking member of the Health and Human Services Committee. Following up on the Mental Health Modernization and Reform Interim, also chaired by our colleague from Sedgwick County, the HHS Committee produced great and far-reaching work this year. We passed a bill establishing certified community behavioral health centers, CCBHCs. This one innovation will greatly improve mental health services in Kansas. In addition, HHS racked up a list of accomplishments. New telemedicine provisions updated the work of the Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board, and a very good start on implementing Kansas's role in the new National Suicide Hotline, 988, which goes into effect in July of 2022. These legislative steps chart progress toward making mental health and addiction treatment more accessible and more effective for the many Kansans who so desperately need it. At one point in time, Kansas enjoyed a stellar reputation in the mental health field, nationally and even internationally. The work of the HHS Committee and the Kansas Legislature this year will put us back on track to recapturing that exemplary role. I will miss this wonderful building, this room, and especially the many wonderful people that I met here. There are several reasons, some having to do with health, some having to do with family, why it is time for me to retire once again. Maybe this time I'll succeed at it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I request that my remarks be spread across the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. Body, we're going to stand at ease and see what the Senate sends us. Members will be out of the aisle. Body, we're going to have the Republicans caucus in the old Supreme Court room here in a second. We will stand at ease, and we'll go over what we think that the Senate's going to send to us, plus a few resolutions that we will be voting on. Representative Woodard for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Democrats, we will have agenda right now in 144 South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Again, Republicans, we're heading to the old Supreme Court room now, and we are standing at ease. will be out the aisle. Message from the Senate, the clerk will read.
Okay. Message from the Senate announcing adoption of Senate Concurrent Resolution 1616. Announcing the Senate herewith transmits the veto message from the governor together with an enrolled copy of Senate Bill 29, an act concerning insurance relating to health insurance, providing for short-term limit duration health plans. Message from the governor regarding veto of Senate Bill 29. We already know that the solution to provide health care for 165,000 Kansans brings thousands of jobs to our state, save small businesses money, and inject millions into our economy is to expand Medicaid. Junk insurance, which does not cover pre-existing conditions or provide consumer protections, is just that, junk. Signing this bill would cause more Kansas families to go bankrupt over medical bills. If the legislature wants to get serious about improving access to health care, they should join 38 other states and the District of Columbia and pass Medicaid expansion. Therefore, under Article 2, Section 14A of the Constitution, I hereby veto Senate Bill 29. Laura Kelly, Governor, dated May 20th, 2021. A motion was made that Senate Bill 29 be passed notwithstanding the governor's veto by a vote of 28 yeas and 11 nays. The motion having received the required 2/3 constitutional majority of the members elected or appointed to the Senate, voting in the affirmative, the bill passed.
The governor's objection to Senate Bill 29 now having been read, the time has now arrived the House reconsider of said bill. Is there a motion? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think most of you are familiar with Senate Bill 29 and a few things in the governor's message with which I would disagree. But just looking at what the bill does, it expands the options in those short-term plans. Short-term plans are already sold. They are sold for one-year periods. It would provide the possibility, aligning with the federal law, to now do up to a three-year plan and have it be renewable for that period of time as an option for those folks who would be looking for lower cost options for whatever reasons in a shorter term nature in the health insurance market. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I move that notwithstanding the governor's veto of Senate Bill 29, the bill be passed.
Anybody like to speak? So no one, representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I close.
The question arises from the motion from Representative Johnson that notwithstanding the governor's veto, the bill be passed. The clerk will open the roll. You may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Representative Hubert votes aye. Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Samsel votes no. Representative Carlson votes no. Any further changes? Representative Carpenter votes aye. Representative Blake Carpenter votes aye. With 67 voted in favor and 48 having voted against the passage of Senate Bill 29, the same having failed to receive the 2/3 majority, it is hereby declared sustained. Reference to bills HCR 1616 is referred to the Committee of the Whole. Majority Leader Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 2311, I move that emergency be declared and that SCR 1616 be advanced to that order of business, final action on bills and concurrent resolutions subject to amendment and debate.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. For purpose of carrying SCR 1616, the Speaker recognizes Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. Today I'm here to urge your support of SCR 1616. We did some good work this year in Commerce on unemployment. We passed a bill unanimously that was bipartisan in nature. And that bill did a lot of good things to get Kansans back to work. In fact, it did more to get Kansans back to work than it really was an unemployment bill. Part of that bill included the My Reemployment Plan. We can now help our constituents with resumes, and they're all to turn one in after 3 weeks of unemployment. We also can offer job training if we need to. Currently, our unemployment is at 3.2%. We should be at 16 weeks according to our normal schedule, yet we're at 26 weeks of unemployment. And we can pay as high as $500 a week. I've heard over the last several weeks, we've all heard over the last several weeks from our businesses, and they're starving for growth. They've got the clients, they've got the customers, but they don't have anyone to help them. They can't, it's nearly impossible to find an employee that will take a job. They'll look and they'll send in their resume, but they won't show up for the first day of work. Unfortunately, our businesses are competing with our broken unemployment system. With the state unemployment funds and the extra federal $300, Kansas can now collect the equivalent of almost $45,000 on an annualized basis. Study after study shows that the longer someone remains unemployed, the less employable they become. The pandemic is all but behind us. We need to get Kansans back to work, and so I would urge your support for this resolution to terminate the extra $300 from the federal government. I'll stand for
Representative Curtis.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition of SCR 1616. You know, it upsets me that we continue to pile on people who are struggling and are at the bottom. And people have been through a lot this past year. And we continue to hear this narrative that the reason people aren't going back to work is because they're receiving unemployment benefits, extended unemployment benefits that are there for a good reason, to help people get back on their feet. Today, there was a study published by Yale that actually debunks that the repeated talking point that the federal expanded unemployment benefits have disincentivized people from returning to work. And the study actually found that people with expanded unemployment benefits are returning to work at a slightly quicker rate than those that aren't receiving the extended unemployment benefits. That's because they're able to meet their basic needs every day. They have less of a stress on them in trying to meet their basic needs that they have every day. And let's face it, a lot of the workers that we're talking about are still struggling with childcare. You know, getting their kids back in school, getting their kids back in childcare. They're still struggling with training, with skills that match the jobs that are open. They still are struggling with transportation, which in many of our areas is not back up to fully operating in those critical areas where people need that transportation to workforce. And let's face it, there are still some people who have a fear of returning to work because they have, you know, vulnerable people at home or because their children are not vaccinated. There are many, many reasons as to why people are not, are hesitant to return to the workplace. But it's not the extended unemployment benefits. And we honestly should be taking advantage of those federal dollars to help the people in Kansas truly get back on their feet and take care of their daily needs. Now, this resolution is not binding, so we're here to discuss this, I guess, to send a message. And I think it would send the wrong message for us to say, we're not going to let the citizens of our state take advantage of the extended unemployment benefits. I think we have to really focus on data. We really need to dig in. I know the resolution quoted a lot of numbers. I know there are a lot of jobs that are open, but I think that we really do need to have that driven by good data. And I'm not so sure that those numbers are entirely accurate. I do know that we do struggle with a lot of job openings, but we've got to do everything we can to help people get back on their feet. So I urge your opposition to SCR 1616, and let's really show support for those Kansans out there still struggling. Thank you.
Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Me and my wife own some restaurants. Before COVID, we owned 4 restaurants, and now we own 3 restaurants. Over this break, after the veto session, before we came back here, me and my wife were closing a restaurant. We were emptying out all our stuff. We were closing the doors. 3 jobs that used to exist now don't exist because we could not get employees to work. One of our cooks got sick, and everybody went on quarantine, and after quarantine, they went on unemployment, and now they won't come back. We are offering well above the minimum wage, but I cannot compete with the deal that the government is giving folks right now. All of our restaurants are struggling. In Lawrence right now, I'm only open 3 to 9 because I can't find prep chefs, because I can't compete with the deal that the government's offering. It's time to get Kansas back to work. It's time to get folks back into the workforce and back into the economy, and it's time to recover from this disastrous economic shutdown. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Prost.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it shouldn't surprise anyone that I'm opposed to this resolution. You know, there's the golden rule, and we're all familiar with the biblical version of the golden rule, that we would do unto others as we would have done unto ourselves. But there's another golden rule that says whoever has the gold makes the rules. And it is very clear to me who has the gold and who is making the rules. What we're really experiencing right now that is creating so much discomfort is finally something that has started to address the disequilibrium in the labor force. We've had 40 years of suppressed wages, more so in this state than in the nation as an average. and now we're getting our comeuppance. But let's go through this resolution a little bit, and I promise you I won't belabor this because I know that we're all ready to get to lunch. The first part of this, we're looking at 3.5% unemployment. That's what's considered full employment. We have job vacancies, but this is a chronic condition that has existed in this state for years before the pandemic and before right now and before extended and enhanced federal benefits. I see on here that there's 73,000 open jobs. Now, the numbers I saw indicate it's closer to 57,000, and I believe the Kansas Chamber in their most recent press release indicated it was 57,000. I do remember seeing the 73,000, and I think that was taken from the job search website Indeed. If you guys haven't looked at Indeed, half of those jobs are not legitimate jobs. This is not a legitimate number. We currently have 33,000 people on unemployment. If every one of those people are kicked off of this system and enter the workforce, we will still be facing the same problem. We have more job vacancies than people to take them. So punishing people by taking this money away does not solve your workforce issue. I also see that we've done what legislators like to do with their own retirement accounts and annualize. This is not an annual income. This is a temporary situation. And not everybody is getting that much. We indicate on here also that the Department of Labor is not enforcing job searches. That's patently untrue. We are. There was a period of time where that was waived, but it's been lifted and we are requiring people to do job searches. We have the somewhat dubious number from the legislative post-audit saying there were 600, that 1 in 4 claims are fraudulent. I think we all know enough to know there's some dispute about that. And that's a different issue. We're trying to blend issues here. The last point specifically on this that I want to address is that in our haste to punish people who've been collecting unemployment, we've done what we've done a lot of this year and written something that is actually quite harmful. We've written this in a way that instructs the U.S. Department of Labor to withdraw from participating in all federal pandemic-related benefits programs. So that includes things like the shared work program that we enjoy very much. This actually allows a company to reduce its hours and not entirely lay an employee off, but keep them employed and offset the drop in their earnings with the shared work program. Instructing the Department of Labor to withdraw from federal participation would affect that. It would affect PUA. PUA is a unique thing. There are a lot of people who don't have a traditional job, and this is a growing part of the labor market. People, and it's a two-way street. People enjoy the freedom of working on a contract basis, and employers enjoy that they escape certain taxes and they escape workers' comp liability and things of that nature. So we have a lot more gig workers. Removing us from federal benefit, from the federal labor benefits would affect that as well. So I think some indication we haven't, some level we haven't thought this through all the way. I have had conversations with my local workforce people who have been working to get people employed. And they indicated to me that there is a chronic problem in this state where employers have not adapted to the realities of the current workforce and the current labor market. We can want and think that people are going to continue to work for substandard wages that don't support their families, but they're not going to. And they've proven that, not just now, but in the years before this. I got an email this week from someone who's an aircraft worker who's been looking for a job for this entire time and is now interviewing in Florida and with a Canadian company. And this enhanced benefit is what has kept that employee in Kansas. He wants to work in Kansas. He wants to get back into the aircraft industry. They are not calling him back. He's not finding work in this field. So he's looking out of state. We are going to have, we take this away, we will have other states poach our labor force and make the situation worse. I have another friend who owns a photography business. She's been using PUA to get by through all of this because her business has dropped. She's invested years of effort and money and time and expertise into this, and she's relied on this. Complicating that still is, it took her a long time to get her money. And I have to chuckle a little bit. All this session, it seems that we've talked about this broken UI system, and I've seen these, what I would describe as crocodile tears about all the people that didn't get their money and how bad the Department of Labor is and how bad the governor's managed it. And now we're at this point and we're trying to create a narrative where after all year talking about how bad the UI system is, we're now talking about how it's too rich and too generous and it's creating a workforce problem. Another thing I'll point out is there are other things that we can do that support the workforce, and there's been legislation introduced on this, and we will not even consider it. There are businesses that can't afford to pay health insurance for their employees. Medicaid expansion is a workforce development tool. It supports the workforce, it helps them enter the workforce, it addresses something called the cliff effect, where people start to lose benefits as they make more money. Those are the things that we could do in this body to address this, but we refuse to even acknowledge that. There are things that we could do with childcare to help people with childcare to encourage participation in the market. But we don't do that. When people ask me to describe this session or sum it up, the word that first comes to my mind is punitive. We've spent a lot of energy and a lot of effort this year punishing people for the things that have happened in the past. And in that, we are lacking any sort of real vision for the future and what we can actually do to make this state better, to encourage better workforce participation, to help those employers fill those jobs that, I will remind you again, existed for several years before this pandemic. I will never understand why we are so intent, if we're not willing to help people, that we find the need to actively hurt them. Thank you.
Representative Coleman.
Will the carrier please stand for questions? Thank you, Representative. Yes, I have an email from one of your constituents, Maria Andrews. Do you know, I sent you this email on May 7th. Do you know, has Maria Andrews received her unemployment? She lives in Overland Park, and you're her rep, so I was just wondering if she had received her unemployment yet.
I forwarded her information up the chain, and they got with her. I don't know if she's received her first payment or not, because the Department of Labor lags behind by several weeks. They, for some reason, after over a year, still can't figure out how to pay the people that are on unemployment.
So you see, this is my point exactly. Why would somebody refuse to work for money they will not receive? I'm hearing from people who have not received unemployment since last April. Why would somebody just sit in their house, refuse to work for money that's not coming to them? It just makes no sense. And even then, even let's say they're going to get this money, if you have a problem hiring employees, maybe raise your wage, maybe, you know, give them better health care. But I know, at least maybe this is just me, but in Kansas City, nobody's receiving unemployment. I'm hearing from so many people who are not receiving unemployment, and I really doubt people are just sitting at home, not working for a check that they are not getting. That's just my take on this. Thank you, Body.
Representative Finch.
Good morning, Body. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to respond to some of the comments that have been made by previous speakers concerning unemployment insurance. And I think it's important that we remember what this program is really for. This is not a social engineering program. This is not a program to reconfigure the workforce or change the wages that are paid or raise the minimum wage. That's another debate for another day. Unemployment insurance is about helping hardworking Kansans who find themselves out of a job. It's money to get them by, not to replace 100% of their wages, but to get them by until they can get back to work. Our state has suffered mightily due to the pandemic and the shutdown, and many workers across the board have lost their jobs. A year ago, our unemployment rate was over 12%. And at that time, extra help was offered by the federal government, and the executive branch took them up on it to help people dealing with extraordinary economic circumstances. Today, that unemployment rate is 3.5. It's back to pre-pandemic levels. And the need for an incentive or additional help is passing. Employers need employees across this state. They are trying to find enough workers to fill shifts, to meet demand, to grow the economy of our state and our nation. And continuing to offer something that was intended for an emergency when the emergency is passed is a foolish waste of resources. Having a debate on all of the things that the prior speaker wanted to talk about, that's what we just had a session for. And we talked about many of those ideas. And the U.S. Congress continues to debate many of those ideas. But the issue before this body today with this resolution is whether we want to continue an emergency unemployment package now that our unemployment rate has returned to pre-pandemic levels. And I would submit to you that we do not. We want to continue to help Kansans who need it, but we know that the best possible condition to help lift people out of poverty, to move forward with their lives, and to achieve the things that they want for themselves and their families to have a job. That should be our focus, not maintaining unemployment compensation that was intended to cover an emergency. So I would ask that you support this resolution, that we help Kansans get back on their feet, get back to work, help our employers to have enough people to cover their shifts, and that we help achieve prosperity for every Kansan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Samsel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, body. I'm going to borrow from my book here, Super Important Stuff. Just a very few highlights here. I do note the sun is shining in Kansas. It's a great day to be here, but I'm in a bit of a pickle. This is a great resolution. I strongly support it. My district would strongly support it. We're ready to get back to work. And I don't know if anybody's sitting at home on the couch or not, but we're ready for everybody to pull their weight if they can. But here's where the pickle comes in, because most folks will recall that I started a peaceful protest last time around asking for an up or down vote on Medicaid expansion, and I would vote no until we had that. So now I'm stuck in my pickle with a good resolution, but no up or down vote on Medicaid expansion, which 68% of my district supports. So the other quandary I've got here is I've got a feeling, not the song, I can't sing, but if this is not a bipartisan resolution, I suspect the governor may not support it and veto it, and then we're left back where we started. It's almost like this is an act in some ways. But I guess I'll think about it and see where it goes. It's a good resolution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the debate and consideration today. Thank you.
Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Lest anyone misunderstand, the governor does not veto resolutions. This is simply a resolution. It does not have the force of law. It compels the governor to do nothing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm opposed to SCR 1616, and I'll tell you the reason why. Women are impacted the most during this pandemic. And why? Because over 50% of single heads of households are women. Women earn 72 cents on the dollar, and the $300, which will end in September, affects their families greatly. We want our children to go back to school, and I will simply say, for many families, this small amount of money makes a difference. This could help a single head of household, which is a woman, buy supplies that their children must have for schools, and other things that, because they are impacted, cannot work, are not able to earn money. If you doubt this, you would have heard on the news how women are impacted, and less than $1,000 could help them, but it will not keep them from working because they can't afford childcare. They have to be home to take care of their children, and this little assistance will help them get them ready for school and do their role as a parent. I hope you will consider what difference this could make to people that don't have money and right now can't work because they have to take care of their children. I will vote no on SCR 1616.
Representative Shue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been thinking about this a little bit more from a nuts and bolts perspective. Will the carrier stand for a couple questions? My first question is, when do these federal benefits expire?
If I recall, it's September 5th or September 6th.
And my understanding is that the federal government requires about 30 days notice if we do want to unenroll from federal benefits.
I'm unsure of that.
I believe that's the case. And so the net effect of this, even if it does happen, is like 2 months worth of unemployment benefits. And we all know from the previous year and a half that anytime you touch the mainframe that the unemployment system runs on, something's going to break. If we do actually do what this resolution wants, it could end up actually having the opposite effect of negatively affecting people who should be getting unemployment, who were previously getting unemployment. And then so I think all of this for 2 months worth of federal benefits that expire in September anyways, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I will be opposing this resolution. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, we covered a lot of ground there. Not a whole lot of it had to do with going back to work, though. First, I want to apologize to one of my constituents that was named by name today that doesn't have a job. Secondly, one of the things that was brought up is people can't find a job or don't want to look, or I'm not even sure how it was presented. But since we're talking about my constituents, I talked to one yesterday, who it's almost become a deal where it's an employer-employee relationship with some of these people. You didn't pay me again this week. I asked that person if they had been looking for a job. I always do. I always ask for a resume when somebody calls me for help. Most of them will send me one, and I do a pretty good job of finding them a job because they're out there. If you don't have a job, it's because you're not looking. This individual would not send me her resume. She said she still had at least 2 months left for us to pay her to stay home. That's why this is important. We need to get Kansans back to work. I urge your support on SCR 1616.
This constitutes final action on SCR 1616. The clerk will open the roll. You may record your vote. Members will be at their seats. Final action. Final action. Members will be in their seats. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Samsel votes aye. With 79 voted in favor, 38 against, the passage of SCR 1616, the same and receive a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Introduction of resolutions and House resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Resolution Number 6018 by Representatives Croft, Anderson, and others. A resolution condemning the recent attacks on the State of Israel and reaffirming Kansas's support and cooperation with Israel.
Speaker recognizes Representative Croft and Thomas for motion on H.R. 6018.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Resolution 6018 recognizes a special relationship between the U.S. and Israel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Israel is one of the leading economic contributors to the world. They rank #1 in startups per capita and only trail the U.S. in total startups. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and they are a key ally for the United States and are extremely important to our national security for a variety of reasons. They partner with us to develop technology and national security, law enforcement, airline, medical, navigation, and many other areas.
So here in Kansas, we have multiple Israeli companies located in Kansas. One such company is ICL in Lawrence. Roughly 60 Kansas companies benefit from doing business with Israel. AdCom, K-State, University of Kansas, the Stowers Institute for Medical Research, the University of Kansas Medical Center benefits from U.S.-Israel relationships with grants. In 2020, we exported more than $32 million worth of goods to Israel, ranking 36th in our relationships. With that, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of House Resolution 6018, and I ask for our remarks to be spread across the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. The body will pause for a second. the resolution.
House Resolution Number 6018 by Representatives Croft, Anderson, and others. A resolution condemning the recent attacks on the State of Israel and reaffirming Kansas's support and cooperation with Israel. Whereas on May 11, 2021, Hamas terrorists launched airstrikes on Israel, targeting Israel's capital, Jerusalem, and several other cities across the country. Whereas Israel declared independence from Great Britain on May 14, 1948, and upon joining the United Nations was recognized as an independent nation state on May 11, 1949. Whereas Israel was founded in response to the more than 6 million Jews killed during the horror of the Holocaust in World War II. Whereas since 1948, Israel has faced terrorism and hostility from its neighbors, which continues today. Whereas Israel has built a strong democracy, a thriving economy, and a diverse cultural life despite the heavy cost of numerous wars, terrorism, international ostracism, and economic boycotts. Whereas Israel continues to thrive despite continued acts of anti-Semitism worldwide, including a tragic event in Overland Park in 2014. Whereas Israel endeavors to work toward peace with the Palestinians and ensure security for Israel's people, neighbors, and citizens of the world. And whereas the people of Kansas share a connection with the people of Israel and view Israel as a trusted ally. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the state of Kansas that we condemn the attacks on the state of Israel and reaffirm Kansas's support and cooperation with Israel.
Representative Heiberger.
Good morning, colleagues. I didn't really want to be down here today, but here we go, exercising our foreign policy expertise again. For those of you who aren't real familiar with the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, let me run through a little hypothetical. Let's imagine it's 1968 and a war breaks out and you and your family are forced to leave your home and you end up in a refugee camp. And that refugee camp is occupied by the people you've just been fighting against. A year goes by, you're still under occupation. More time goes by. Let's imagine you're my age, 1968. So more time goes by, you graduate from high school, you get married. More time goes by, you have kids, the kids grow up. More time goes by, those kids have kids. More time goes by, those kids are about ready to graduate from high school. And that's exactly the situation of the people who are living in the occupied territories of Israel right now. They've been living under occupation for 53 years. 53 years. You know, how would you, I know all of you, I mean, you're independent, you're proud of your guns. I know how you would respond to that situation, or how you say you would respond to it. And instead of a resolution that's calling for us all to work together to find a solution that will give a lasting peace and dignity to the Arab citizens of the West Bank and Gaza, we are passing a resolution supporting the people who are using fighter bombers to drop bombs on the most densely populated place on earth, the Gaza Strip. And hundreds of civilians died. Instead of working for peace, we're supporting the murder of civilians. I would encourage you to vote no. Thank you.
Representative Coleman.
Yes, the previous speaker took a lot of my talking points away from me. You know, this is really hard for me, you know, as possibly one of the only Jewish members of the body. Could the carriers of the bill stand for questioning? Or the resolution, I mean. Okay, so it's only one page. Anywhere on here, does it condemn Israel's evictions of Palestinians who live in their home that was granted to them by the UN, and then the Israeli government comes in and takes away their home and replaces the Palestinian family with an Israeli family? Does this condemn Israel's actions for illegally colonizing the West Bank in Israel?
No.
Thank you. And I know just recently Israel, I think this is the month of Ramadan in Islam, and Israeli Defense Forces sent police, military personnel into the third holiest site in Islam, and basically people were praying and they went in and started using some violence against the Palestinians who were peacefully praying on a very holy time for them. Does this condemn Israel for going into that mosque and starting this very recent conflict?
That's not what this resolution is about.
What was that?
I said no.
Okay, so I think this resolution was brought in good faith, but you know, it takes two to tango, and Palestinians may have, you know, done some things, but they did some things in retaliation to Israeli actions. And I'm not going to let my Jewish bias blind. Like, I got family in Israel, so this is hard for me to take this stance. But you know, I can't support this resolution because I have to stand with the Palestinian people. And you know, some people might say, okay, but violence is never. You can never use violence if you're being oppressed. And I just want to say, let's have a history lesson. Let's remember a couple hundred years ago, American history, the American revolutionaries, they used violence to get our independence. And now the Palestinians are using the same tactics that George Washington embraced to get their independence. So I think there's two sides of this conflict, and they both keep egging it on. And I think I could support this resolution if it did also condemn Israel for some of its actions. You know what I mean? It needs to be a two-side, both sides need to end the conflict. That's what it needs to be. It's not just the Palestinians. Both sides need to come to the table and let's have a two-state solution, and let's get Israeli forces out of the West Bank and let Israel govern Israel and let Palestine govern Palestine. But I cannot support this resolution. So that's all I have. Thank you, body.
Representative Leon.
Good afternoon. I would be remiss if I didn't come and plant a flag for liberty and the God of Israel in the House this morning as this resolution is being debated. I want to read a couple of things that ministered to my heart this morning when our colleague from, actually I don't know where you're from, Overland Park, I think, our colleagues from Overland Park brought this resolution. It's from a ministry that I follow. One of the first promises in the Bible is given to Abram when God appointed to be a blessing to the whole earth. Not only did God tell this patriarch that he would receive a good land and have many children, but he also promised Abram, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. Genesis 12, 1-3. That's an incredible promise. God will favor those who favor Abram and set himself against those who oppose Abram. Like me, you probably want God's blessing and favor in your life. This verse gives us the secret to obtaining that blessing. We just need to bless Abram. Abram, later renamed Abraham, died some 4,000 years ago. So one might think that is you're no longer able to bless him. That is not the case. The promise to Abraham was passed down through his son Isaac to his grandson Jacob. Jacob, of course, was renamed Israel, his sons being the founding fathers of the tribes of Israel. So the promise of Abraham passed on to Israel as well. So God is going to bless those who bless Abraham, which means he's going to bless those who bless Israel. And this promise has not and will not be withdrawn. As for me and my house in the state of Kansas, in District 117, we will bless Israel. I encourage you, body, to stand with me. Thank you.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things I do driving to and from my district is listen to podcasts. You may not be interested in this podcast, but Megyn Kelly has a podcast. And the last one I've been listening to had Alan Dershowitz and Shadi Hamid. They talked about Israel and Palestine. And the whole problem is that it seems to be boiling down to is Hamas gained control of the Palestinian nation, and all they want to do is find a reason to bomb Israel, and they go and they hide behind children in office buildings and such. It has to stop. Somewhere it has to stop. This is our way of saying that we don't agree with what's going on. I don't think the Palestinians are awful people, no. I think Hamas has a horrible, horrible issue with the Israelis. All I hear from all of you is, why can't we be nice to everybody? Let's stand for the people that are having their people killed. The Israelis never give pictures of their dead people. But the Palestinians, if they have any, oh, sure, they do that. So please, I urge you to vote for this. Thank you.
Representative, you may close. Representative Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a partner with in many areas with one of our greatest allies, I urge your support for this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I close.
For the motion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. Motion passing. Division has been requested. The clerk will open the roll. Roll call has been requested. Seeing significant hands, this is a roll call vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. 83 voted in favor, 27 against. The resolution carries. Are there announcements? Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is the annual clear meeting upon adjournment, 152 South. If we have a quorum, we will elect new leaders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oh, barbecue also. Thank you.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joint Information Technology Committee will commence in about, 1 o'clock. Lunch is provided, and we will try to be out by 3:30. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hawkins.
Speaker, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Number one, I would like to thank my staff, BJ Harden, Chief of Staff, Mariah Day, Communications, and Julie Bramer, Legislative Assistant, for all of the work that they did this year. They have absolutely been wonderful in what they've done, and thank you so much to my staff. And the rest, we're going to keep brief because we know you want to get out. The Republican caucus, you have done yeoman's work this year. The whole body has done a great job. Both sides have worked well together, but I truly believe our caucus has done a good job. You've stuck together, you've worked hard, and it's my honor to serve as your majority leader this year, and I thank you for that opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the body, I know you're all anxious to get going. It is a custom in our chamber to give some thank yous at the end of the session. I want to thank all of you for the work that you've put in. It feels like it's been 2 sessions in one, and an incredibly high number of bills introduced and debated and passed on to the other side. We do have one more year in this biennium to go, so we'll have some lively debates next year. I'd like to thank the Legislative Research Department for the work that they do getting us information, the Revisor's Office for the incredibly difficult job of trying to take our ideas and put them into workable legal form and follow those through the process and continue to update them sometimes well into the night or overnight. They do an amazing job. I'd like to give both of those departments a round of applause. Please join me. I'd like to thank my staff, my Chief of Staff, Michael Murray, who's come over from the Senate, and we believe we've elevated him and taught him some new tricks over here in the House. Jane Klaus, my office assistant, who's been spectacular this year, helping people and constituents who've had a number of challenges as we've navigated the pandemic. I want to thank her for all of her hard work as well. I'd like to thank Minority Leader Sawyer and his team. We fought hard, but we've always, I think, fought fair, and appreciate the opportunity to work alongside you and against you from time to time, most of the time. And I want to thank our leadership team. I work with 2 of the greatest folks, the Speaker and the Majority Leader, and we have a team unlike any other, I think, in recent history and maybe in the history of the state. It truly is a team effort. It's not just the 3 amigos shtick, as the Senate likes to tease us. We actually get along and want to work for the benefit of this chamber and for the benefit of the state. We thank you all. Have safe travels. Appreciate the chance to serve you as Speaker Pro Tem.
Minority Leader Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start off by thanking the staff for the House Minority Caucus, thanking my Chief of Staff, Joe Lee, for the work he's done, our Communications Director, Alexis Simmons, our Agenda Chair, Andrew Harrison, and of course, our Executive Assistant, been there a long time, Jan Keene. I thank all of you for the work you've done. Appreciate it. Also like to thank the Speaker, the Pro Tem, and the Majority Leader. It has been great work with you guys this year. I'd like to thank all the members of this body. I think we have done a lot of good work this year, both the Majority Caucus and in the Minority Caucus. I said at the beginning of the session that about 90% of the issues aren't controversial. They're bipartisan in some way, shape, or form. I think that was true again this session. On most issues, we worked together. And some of the stuff we defeated were bipartisan. It wasn't partisan. So we've done some good work. We passed the budget. I think that was pretty decent. We, for the first time in this body, found a way to pass medical cannabis. We've still got some more issues to work on. Maybe we can find a way to pass sports betting in a bipartisan way. And hopefully we can find a way to get care coverage to more Kansas. Maybe we can do that in a bipartisan way too. But again, I appreciate all the work we've all done. This has been a tough session with COVID. This is unprecedented, the things we had to put up with. And I do want to thank the Speaker publicly for all the work he did to try to keep this place safe for us. Before the session started, making sure that we can meet by Zoom in committees, that if you come to committee, you were 6 feet apart, that we did a lot of extraordinary things to make sure this place was safe. We closed it off to the public, and it worked. We got through the session. It was a productive session. We got a lot done. I look forward to the next session when things are back to normal. We were meeting again in person and doing the things we normally do. But again, thank you for this session. Thank you, everybody. Let's get home safely and have a good session next year, too.
As we close out the session, I want to thank you and congratulate you on your hard work, your ideas, and your commitment to passing good Kansas policy. Too often, we've seen elected officials come here singular focused. They come to the table wanting everything to be about education, or everything to be about business, or everything to be about a particular pet project. But by coming together as a people's house and doing the heavy lifting, we've been able to deliver a comprehensive changes, real results for our families, for our kids, and for our local businesses. I'm so proud of this team, each and every member of this body, for helping your constituents weather some difficult times, for coming here in January ready to put your shoulder into finding real-life solutions, and for sticking with the process to see these tremendous policies change through the finish line. I look forward to doing more good work with you guys next session. But we can't leave here without thanking the people who make these trains run, our leadership staff. I'd like to thank Paige, Melinda, and Eric. I'd also like to thank our Majority Leader's office, BJ, Mariah, and Julie, and our Speaker Pro Tem's office, Michael and Jane. Of course, we can't forget our Chief Clerk and the fantastic staff of our office, and our Sergeant at Arms, and all the doormen. Thank you. Enjoy your summer and fall, enjoy your families, and enjoy the positive changes you've worked so hard to achieve here. God bless and drive safe. By the authority vested in me as Speaker of the House of Representatives, I now declare House adjourned, sine die.